In 363 AD, a council of bishops made a decision. They gathered in a city called Laodicea. They reviewed a list of texts that early Christians had been reading for centuries. Texts that described Jesus in terms so vast, so cosmically terrifying, that ordinary people weren't supposed to sit with them unsupervised. They voted, and those books were banned, copies were hunted down, burned, and the portrait of Jesus inside them, a portrait that the earliest believers accepted as scripture, was erased from Western Christianity almost completely. Almost. Because high in the mountains of Ethiopia, a group of monks kept copying. They copied through war. They copied through invasion. They copied through centuries of isolation. They had no idea that the rest of the world had thrown away what they were preserving. They just believed it was true, so they kept going. And what they preserved describes a Jesus that most Christians today have never encountered. Not the soft-eyed figure of Renaissance painting, not the gentle shepherd of Sunday school, a being whose face blazes brighter than 1,000 suns, whose voice commands obedience from angels and demons across every realm of existence, in whose presence, according to texts nearly 2,000 years old, time and space themselves bend. Mel Gibson has read these texts, and in 2027, he is putting that Jesus on the biggest screens in the world. This is the story of what was buried, who kept it alive, and why it is about to change everything you think you know about this man. You have to start in 2004, because without 2004, nothing that comes next makes sense. Mel Gibson made a film that every studio in Hollywood refused to touch. He financed it himself, mortgaged his own future on it, shot the entire thing in Aramaic, Latin, and Hebrew, languages that hadn't been spoken in that context for 2,000 years. No concessions to commercial pressure, no softening of what the story actually contained. The Passion of the Christ grossed over $600 million worldwide. It became the highest-grossing R-rated film in American history, a record it held for nearly 20 years. The people who said it would ruin him were wrong. The people who said audiences didn't want unfiltered religious cinema were wrong. But Gibson never claimed the story was complete. From the beginning, he said publicly, The Passion only told the first half. It ended at the tomb. What happened next, what really happened, in every realm, not just in Jerusalem, that story had never been told. He spent the next 2 decades trying to tell it. In interviews over the years, he revealed he had developed 2 scripts. One was traditional, structured, close to what audiences would expect. The other, he said on the Joe Rogan Experience, was like an acid trip, a journey through multiple realms, through hell, through angelic hierarchies, across dimensions of reality that don't operate on human time. Most people heard that and assumed he was being dramatic. He wasn't. He was describing, almost word for word, what the Ethiopian Bible has always said happened. The Resurrection of the Christ. Part 1 is not a rumor. It is currently filming at Cinecittà Studios in Rome. $100 million budget. Lionsgate distribution. Part 1 on Good Friday, 2027. Part 2 on Ascension Day, 40 days later. Even the release calendar is a theological statement. The scripts are classified. At the American film market, international buyers were told they could not read them before committing to distribution deals. In an industry built on pitch decks and screeners, Gibson asked the most powerful buyers in global film to write checks based entirely on his reputation. Most of them did. What little Gibson has confirmed is this: the film begins before Bethlehem. It opens with the fall of the angels. It will move through realms that have no equivalent in any Western biblical film ever produced. The resurrection, Gibson has said, cannot be told as a single linear event because it did not happen in a single linear dimension. When you understand what the Ethiopian Bible says about the structure of creation, about the seven heavens, the descent of Christ through each one, the cosmic architecture of what the crucifixion and resurrection actually were, you stop wondering where Gibson got this vision. You start wondering how he found it before anyone told him where to look. Most people in the Western world have never heard of the Ethiopian Orthodox Theological Church. That is the first thing worth fixing. It is one of the oldest Christian institutions on earth. Christianity arrived in Ethiopia in the 4th century, not as a colonial import, but as an organic continuation of the faith that had already spread south and east from Jerusalem. It was written down in Ge'ez, an ancient sacred language that predates Latin as a vehicle for Christian theology. It developed its own theological traditions independently of Rome, Constantinople, or any council that Rome later convened. When the Roman Empire began deciding what Christians were allowed to believe, and more importantly, allowed to read, Ethiopia was largely unreachable. Islamic expansion in the 7th century created a geographic wall that, entirely by accident, became a wall of preservation. The book Burnings and Doctrinal Purges of the West happened on the other side of a barrier that Ethiopian Christianity never had to cross. The result? The Ethiopian Bible contains up to 88 books, 22 more than the Catholic canon, and 44 more than most Protestant Bibles. It includes texts that Western councils explicitly banned. Among them, the Book of Enoch, the Book of Jubilees, the Ascension of Isaiah. All three describe Jesus in ways that the Western Church decided ordinary people should never read. All three have been sitting in Ethiopian monasteries, carefully copied and preserved for over 15 centuries. The Book of Enoch is not a fringe document. Fragments of it were found among the Dead Sea Scrolls, which means it was circulating widely among devout Jews in the centuries around the birth of Christianity. Early church fathers quoted it. The New Testament's own Epistle of Jude directly cites it as authoritative prophecy. This is a book that the earliest Christians read, trusted, and treated as revelation. Then, in 363 AD, the Council of Laodicea banned it, ordered it removed, had copies destroyed, and for the next 17 centuries most of the Western world never encountered what it said. Here is what it says. Enoch describes a figure he calls the Son of Man, the Chosen One, the Righteous Judge, and the description is nothing like the portraits that have hung in Western churches for 1,000 years. His head is white as wool. His face is filled with a grace so overwhelming it cannot be described in language. He sits at the center of a heavenly courtroom surrounded by rivers of fire. Angels, beings of incomprehensible power who have existed since before the foundations of the earth, kneel before him. His authority extends across every realm of existence, every dimension of reality, every age of time. Now open the book of Revelation, the one book that remained in the Western canon. Chapter 1, verses 14 through 16. The description of Christ, hair white as wool, eyes like blazing fire, feet like polished bronze refined in a furnace, voice like rushing waters, a sharp sword issuing from his mouth, face blazing with unbearable light. The descriptions are not similar, they are the same. Scholars of ancient Jewish and Christian texts have confirmed this is not coincidence. The author of Revelation was drawing directly from the Enochic tradition, the same tradition that was later banned, burned, and replaced with something more convenient. But Ethiopia kept it. And so every Ethiopian Christian, for 15 centuries, has been reading a portrait of Jesus that the Western Church decided was too much. People assume the texts were banned for theological reasons, that the early church read them, found them doctrinally wrong, and responsibly excluded them from the canon. That is not what happened. Look at what these texts actually teach, not the apocalyptic imagery, the theology underneath it. The Book of Enoch, the Ascension of Isaiah, and the texts the Ethiopian Church preserved describe a Christ who offers something that no institution can control: a direct, personal, unmediated encounter with God. No priest required, no sacrament required, no tithe required. These texts record Christ saying, in language the Ethiopian tradition preserved, "You are not children of dust, you are children of light." The kingdom of God does not come from outside you, it is already within you. Salvation is not a transaction, it is an awakening to what you already are. Read that again slowly, and then ask yourself, how does a centralized institution built on the authority of clergy, the necessity of sacraments, and the financial power of indulgences survive if those words reach ordinary people? It doesn't. So those words were removed. The cosmic Christ who declared the divine spark in every human being was replaced by a manageable figure. Beautiful, gentle, entirely dependent on institutional mediation to reach. An icon, a painting, something that fit inside a frame. The monks in Ethiopia never got that memo. They kept copying the original. The Ascension of Isaiah was written in the late 1st or early 2nd century, within living memory of the New Testament. It describes the structure of creation as 7 distinct heavens, each more overwhelming than the last. The first heaven, angels overseeing the affairs of earth. The second, the movements of stars and celestial bodies across the cosmos. The third, paradise, the tree of life, gates of living fire, floors made of starlight. By the 6th heaven, a human being simply cannot endure what exists there. The 7th heaven, the supreme realm, no created being can survive in its full presence. And it is from the 7th heaven that the Beloved descends. But here is what the text describes in extraordinary detail. At every level of heaven, on his way down to earth, Christ deliberately veils himself. He dims his own radiance at each heaven so that the beings there perceive him as one of their own, an angel among angels, a celestial among celestials. Not because he is hiding in shame, because if he arrived at his full magnitude at any level of that descent, existence itself could not survive the encounter. He arrives in Bethlehem as a human infant. Every realm of creation watched the incarnation happen. Almost none of them knew what they were looking at. Only the Father and the Spirit understood what had entered that manger. Mel Gibson has said his film must begin in another realm entirely. He has said it opens with the fall of the angels. He has said the resurrection cannot follow a linear timeline because it is occurring across multiple dimensions of reality simultaneously. That is not a filmmaker being eccentric. That is someone who found the Ascension of Isaiah and understood exactly what it was describing. Walk into an Ethiopian Orthodox church today, and you will not see the Jesus of Western Renaissance painting. You will see Exiober, Lord of the Universe. Dark-skinned, deep-eyed, surrounded by gold that represents not luxury but the fire of divine presence. Fully human and fully cosmic simultaneously. Not softened for accessibility, not domesticated for institutional comfort. The same figure Enoch described, the same being the Ascension of Isaiah mapped across the architecture of 7 heavens. In Ethiopian theology, miracles are not acts of charity, they are acts of cosmic restoration. When Christ commands a storm to stop, creation is recognizing its author and obeying. When Christ heals disease, the original design of existence is being repaired. When Christ raises the dead, he is not bending the rules of reality. He is simply asserting that life is more fundamental than death, and always has been. Modern scholars studying the Kingdom of Axum's manuscript traditions have found something that is quietly reshaping the field of early Christian history. The most sophisticated theological scholarship of the first millennium may not have been happening in Rome or Constantinople. It may have been happening in Africa. Ethiopian manuscripts that have never been fully translated, traditions that have never been digitized, texts that Western scholars have barely begun to examine. The monks preserved more than they knew. Here is what it comes down to. The Jesus that a billion people carry in their minds right now, the gentle, fair-skinned figure of countless paintings, the meek shepherd of popular imagination, was not shaped by the oldest sources. It was shaped by the sources that survived the purge, and by the European artists who illustrated those surviving sources 1,000 years after the original texts had been destroyed. The original portrait, the one the earliest Christians read, the one that early church fathers quoted before the councils told them to stop, the one that Ethiopian monks preserved through 15 centuries of isolation, looks almost nothing like that. It looks like what Enoch described. It looks like what the Ascension of Isaiah mapped. It looks like what the Book of Revelation preserved in the one chapter that made it through the filter. A being of absolute cosmic authority who chose to arrive as an infant, who moved through every realm of existence before it was time, who died as the source of all life, which the text describes as a rupture in the fabric of reality itself, and whose resurrection was not a single moment in Jerusalem, but a cosmic explosion of infinite light, reclaiming infinite territory, simultaneously across every dimension that exists. The resurrection of the Christ arrives in 2027 with a $100 million budget and a director who has already proven once that he will tell the unfiltered version of this story regardless of what the industry thinks. If he executes what he has described, this will be the first time most of the world sees the cosmic Christ of Ethiopia and Enoch on the largest screen available. And once you see that, the painting on the church wall is never going to look complete again. The monks who kept copying those manuscripts never expected this moment. They had no idea that in 2025, a Hollywood director would spend $100 million to show the world what they had been guarding. They were not preserving a controversy. They were not making a political statement. They climbed their mountains, sat in their stone rooms, and copied every word they believed was sacred, generation after generation, for 1,500 years. They preserved a Christ the Roman institution decided was too powerful to be public knowledge, too direct, too unmediated, a being who told people they carried divinity inside them and didn't need anyone's permission to access it. And here is the question they are quietly asking from those cliff-face monasteries right now. This is only the beginning. There are manuscripts in the Tigray highlands that have never been translated into any modern language. Texts that scholars have not yet examined. Traditions that exist nowhere in Western academic literature. If the Book of Enoch alone was enough to reshape our entire understanding of who this man was, what is in the manuscripts that haven't been opened yet? What else did they preserve? What else was buried?